Uber was supposed to change the world. And for a while, it looked like it actually would. With just a few taps on a phone, a black car appeared at your location within minutes. No cash. No waiting in the rain. No calling taxi companies. It felt revolutionary. Investors called Uber the future of transportation. Silicon Valley treated it like a tech miracle. And cities around the world suddenly found themselves invaded by thousands of drivers almost overnight. But behind the sleek app and billion-dollar branding was a company burning unimaginable amounts of money. Billions. Not millions. Billions. Because Uber wasn't just trying to become successful. It was trying to take over entire cities. And to do that, the company launched one of the most aggressive expansion campaigns in modern business history. Even if it meant breaking laws, destroying industries, and losing money on nearly every ride. This is how Uber lost billions trying to dominate the world. Before Uber existed, taxis controlled urban transportation. And honestly, most people hated them. In many cities, getting a cab was frustrating. Long waits. Cash-only payments. Drivers refusing rides. Terrible customer service. The experience felt outdated. Then in 2009, two entrepreneurs, Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, launched Uber in San Francisco. At first, it was simple. Tap a button. Get a ride. That alone felt futuristic. But Uber's real innovation wasn't technology. It was convenience. The app solved problems people dealt with for decades. You could track your driver. Pay automatically. Rate the experience. Suddenly, taxis looked ancient. Customers loved it instantly. And investors became obsessed. Because Uber wasn't selling rides. It was selling a vision. A future where transportation became instant, seamless, and controlled entirely through software. And Silicon Valley poured money into the company. Huge amounts of money. Billions from venture capital firms, global investors, and tech giants. Uber became one of the most valuable startups on Earth. But there was one massive problem. The business barely made money. In fact, in many cities, Uber lost money on every single ride. And it did that intentionally. Because Uber's real strategy was domination. The company aggressively subsidized rides to make prices unbelievably cheap. Sometimes cheaper than public transportation. Customers became addicted. Why take a taxi when Uber was faster and cheaper? But those low prices were fake. Investor money was covering the losses. Uber wasn't operating like a normal business. It was operating like a weapon. The goal wasn't profit. The goal was growth at all costs. And Uber expanded with shocking aggression. City after city. Country after country. Sometimes entering markets without permission. Sometimes ignoring local laws completely. Governments tried to stop them. Taxi unions protested. Regulators sued them. Drivers rioted in the streets. Uber kept expanding anyway. Because Travis Kalanick believed something very simple. Move fast enough, and governments won't be able to stop you. This became Uber's identity. Aggressive. Rebellious. Relentless. Employees inside the company described the culture as intense and even toxic. Winning mattered more than rules. And for a while, that strategy worked. Uber spread across the globe at terrifying speed. London. Paris. New York. India. China. Latin America. Everywhere. The company became a symbol of Silicon Valley disruption. But disruption came with consequences. Taxi drivers saw their incomes collapse. Entire industries were destabilized almost overnight. And while customers enjoyed cheap rides, someone had to pay the price. Usually the drivers. Uber marketed driving as freedom. Be your own boss. Work whenever you want. But reality was different. Drivers were technically independent contractors. That meant Uber avoided paying traditional employee benefits like healthcare, insurance, paid leave, or minimum wage protections. And over time, many drivers realized something painful. After fuel costs, maintenance, and Uber's commission, some drivers were earning very little. Meanwhile, Uber itself still wasn't profitable, which created a bizarre situation. Drivers struggled financially. The company lost billions. And investors kept pouring in money anyway. Why? Because everyone believed Uber would eventually dominate transportation completely. Investors imagined a future where Uber eliminated competitors and raised prices later. The company wasn't judged on profit. It was judged on growth. And Uber grew faster than almost any company in history. But then came the scandals. And there were a lot of them. Reports emerged of toxic workplace culture inside Uber. Executives were accused of harassment, intimidation, and unethical behavior. The company allegedly used secret software called Greyball to evade authorities in cities where Uber faced legal pressure. There were lawsuits, privacy controversies, driver protests, public outrage. Then came one of the biggest disasters: self-driving cars. Uber believed autonomous vehicles were the future. Because drivers were expensive. If Uber could replace human drivers with AI, profits could explode. So the company invested billions into self-driving technology. But the project became chaotic. There were legal battles with competitors, internal problems, and eventually, tragedy. In 2018, one of Uber's autonomous test vehicles struck and killed a pedestrian in Arizona. The incident shocked the world. Suddenly, Uber's futuristic image started collapsing. The company no longer looked unstoppable. It looked reckless. At the same time, Uber faced brutal competition internationally, especially in China. Uber spent enormous amounts trying to dominate the Chinese market. But local rival Didi fought back aggressively. The competition became a financial war. Both companies burned huge amounts of cash offering discounts and incentives. Eventually, Uber surrendered. After losing billions in China alone, Uber sold its Chinese operations to Didi. And this happened repeatedly across different markets. Uber entered cities aggressively, burned investor money, subsidized rides, fought regulators, then struggled to maintain profitability. Because the economics were much harder than people expected. Transportation is expensive. Drivers need incentives. Insurance costs money. Cities impose regulations. Customers expect low prices. And unlike software companies, Uber had real-world operational costs everywhere. It wasn't scaling like Facebook or Instagram. Every ride required an actual human being and an actual car. That changed everything. Then came the pandemic. And suddenly, people stopped traveling. Uber's business collapsed almost overnight. Demand disappeared. Drivers quit. Losses exploded. The company was forced to cut costs aggressively. Thousands of employees were laid off. And for the first time, Uber had to face reality. Growth alone wasn't enough anymore. Investors wanted profits. But there was another problem. Uber had trained customers to expect cheap rides. When prices increased, people complained immediately. And today, many users notice something strange. Uber rides often cost far more than they used to. Sometimes dramatically more. That's because the era of heavily subsidized rides is ending. For years, investor money helped make rides artificially cheap. Now Uber actually has to survive as a business. And that's much harder than dominating headlines. But despite all the chaos, Uber still changed the world. The company transformed transportation forever. It forced taxis to modernize. It normalized gig work. It reshaped urban mobility. And it proved how quickly technology can disrupt entire industries. But Uber also revealed something darker about Silicon Valley. Growth can hide enormous weaknesses. For years, investors celebrated expansion while ignoring whether the business truly worked. As long as numbers went up, nobody cared how much money was burning underneath. Uber became one of the clearest examples of modern tech culture. Move fast. Dominate markets. Worry about profits later. Sometimes that creates billion-dollar empires. And sometimes, it creates billion-dollar losses. Because in the end, Uber didn't just spend money building a transportation company. It spent billions trying to take over the world.